Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Now, if you've ever looked at the systems running our world and thought, man, there's got to be a better way to make this actually work, well, you're absolutely in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into a seriously fascinating text. It's the July 2026 preface to Makased al-Mafahim by Amir Mohamad Ardalan. And what we're going to do together is treat legal reform not just as some dry debate, but as literal conceptual surgery. We're going to open up the very foundations of how laws are made, how they're understood, and see how they can be fundamentally re-engineered. Okay, let's dive into this. The entire foundation of this work was born from this kind of midnight paradox that the author just couldn't shake. It's a question that sounds super simple at first, but honestly, the deeper you look, the more it just unravels everything we assume about justice. Think about it. Why do legal concepts, things that are specifically built to create order and justice, so often become the exact tools that breed disorder and inequality? Like, why does a system designed to protect us end up breaking down the very society it's supposed to serve? This is the core mystery we're trying to solve today, and I gotta say, the author's pursuit of the answer is nothing short of fascinating.
To really get the problem, we have to look at how law is traditionally taught. The author uses this brilliant metaphor here. He describes legal concepts, things like property, liability, contracts, as being taught as completely lifeless, predetermined objects. Imagine sitting in a classroom, and you just memorize that property equals sovereignty or liability equals fault. And it feels like this eternal, unquestionable truth, right? But then you step out of the classroom. You look at the real-world crises happening out there in the streets, in the markets, in the courts, and suddenly it hits you. You see this massive, deeply frustrating gap between the flawless theory on the textbook page and the messy, often broken reality of everyday practice.
So let's move into part one, the intellectual journey, searching for answers.
To bridge this massive gap, the author basically embarked on a philosophical detective story. And this quest didn't just happen overnight. It was very much a step-by-step evolution. He started at the natural first station, which was classic Iranian law, leaning heavily on the deep philosophical views of Nasser Khattuzian. But while that gave him a solid foundation, it didn't quite offer the ultimate cure he was looking for. So he journeyed westward into analytical philosophy. He studied semantic functionalism under thinkers like Sellers and Harman, and he learned this crucial idea. A concept's meaning is really just its role in a network of reasoning. From there, he explored conceptual engineering with Thompson and Close, realizing that, hey, concepts can actually be redesigned. Now, these are incredibly powerful tools, but here was the catch, and it's a big one. These Western tools lack crucial roots in the author's own Iranian cultural ecosystem. They lit up the path for sure, but they couldn't fully cure the specific chaos within the Iranian legal system. He realized he needed something much closer to home.
Which brings us to part two, the ancient compass, Asha and Druj.
Driven by this intense need for cultural resonance, the author dug into the deepest, most ancient layers of Iranian thought, specifically the ancient songs of Zoroaster, known as the Gathas. And it was there that he had this profound eureka moment. He unearthed an ancient concept called Asha. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is that while in ancient texts, Asha roughly translates to truth, it goes so much deeper than just, being honest. Asha represents cosmic order. It is the true system of existence. It isn't just some nice moral guideline. It's a fundamental guiding compass for how the entire universe and society within it should properly function. It's the ultimate ideal state of harmony and structure.
But you can't really understand Asha without looking at its exact opposite. And standing in stark contrast to Asha is Druj. Druj isn't just a simple lie. It represents total disorder, chaos, and a complete deviation from the true path of existence. So the author took this ancient concept and coined a brilliant modern diagnostic term. He calls it functional Druj. Basically, when a law looks perfect on paper but ends up causing chaos, inequality, and systemic breakdown out in the real world, that legal system is suffering from functional Druj. It has completely deviated from its true purpose. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is how the author uses this. He makes it crystal clear that he isn't just pulling Asha out of a museum to use as some religious or mythological belief. No way! He is brilliantly repurposing it. He takes Asha completely out of the realm of theology and plants it firmly into modern law and politics as a rational benchmark. It literally becomes a diagnostic tool, a standard of measurement to evaluate whether our modern legal concepts are actually functioning to produce a healthy, ordered society, or if they're just, creating more chaos.
All right, let's move into part three, the three-criterion scale.
So, having established Asha as the ultimate benchmark of a functioning society, we obviously need a practical framework to actually measure it, right? Like, how do we know if a law is achieving Asha? Let's move to this and see how it builds. The author outlines 3 distinct, measurable steps that act as this new legal diagnostic tool. And the whole thing is structured around the ontological priority of human beings. Basically, for any legal concept to be considered healthy and functional, it has to pass through 3 specific gates: predictability, viability, and ultimately, synergy. Let's break down what each of these actually means for the average person living under the law.
Step 1 is predictability. This is the absolute foundation of individual freedom. A law must allow individuals to rationally plan their lives. If the rules are constantly changing, or if they're applied arbitrarily, well, freedom essentially dies. Then we have step 2, viability. Once you can actually predict the rules, the law then has to actively provide the material and spiritual bedrock for you to survive and flourish. Because think about it, a predictable law that starves you is definitely not a viable law. It has to actively support human life and growth.
And that brings us to the final step, synergy. The author argues that synergy isn't something you can just force. It is the natural, organic outcome when those first 2 criteria are actually met. When individuals can predict their environment, and when they have the viable resources they need to flourish, their rational actions just naturally combine to create a stable, thriving, and synergistic world. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. If a legal concept achieves synergy, it has successfully reached that ideal state of Asha. Now, this 3-step scale directly addresses one of the oldest political dilemmas in human history. Does the law prioritize the individual, or does it prioritize society? The author's answer here is remarkably clear and, honestly, structurally sound. He states that the legal journey absolutely must always start with the individual. The individual is the starting point, the absolute priority. But, and this is the key, if the laws are designed correctly, if they actually provide predictability and viability, that journey will naturally land on a healthy, synergistic society. Society is simply the landing point of well-functioning individual laws.
This brings us to our final section, Part 4, a functionalist legal future.
Now, this isn't just some abstract theory we're talking about. It's a highly practical blueprint. In upcoming volumes, the author actually plans to take this exact functionalist framework and apply it directly to the core pillars of private law. We're talking property, civil liability, and contracts. He's going to put these ancient concepts right on the operating table, demanding a massive paradigm shift. And this brilliantly illustrates the change we need. We have to move away from definition-centric law, where generations of students just blindly memorize what a concept is based on centuries-old definitions. Instead, we must aggressively pivot to functionalist law. We have to look at every single law and ask why and how should this actually work in the real world right now. Because at the end of the day, if the function is broken, the definition is completely useless.
This entire framework is really designed to empower the people who actually operate the system. The author dedicates this work to the students who are just completely tired of memorizing and are ready to dissect and perform real conceptual surgery on broken laws. He dedicates it to the judges who are willing to use functional interpretation to deliver actual, tangible justice rather than just hiding behind rigid verbal molds, and he dedicates it to the lawmakers who still firmly believe that legislation can be written in synergy with the living, breathing reality of our society.
Ultimately, the author actually wrote this preface for his past self, the confused student sitting in the dark, wondering why justice just wasn't working. He built a lantern to light the way forward. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a thought directly inspired by his journey. Look around at the systems, the rules, and the concepts that dictate your day-to-day existence. Ask yourself, are the laws governing our lives actually working in synergy to help us flourish? Or are we secretly trapped in functional drudge? Thank you so much for learning with me today. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.